As leadership educators and influencers go, there aren't many better or more famous than the late, great Stephen R. Covey. A highly acclaimed businessman, public speaker, and author, his works have influenced the lives of people on all sides of the globe. They even outlasted the great man himself following his untimely death from a cycling accident in 2012 at the modest age of 79. For the few people on this planet who haven't come across Covey before, or those of you who are unaware of his major works, or his impact on leadership practice that we still see today, his impact on the business world was vast. At one stage, he was considered amongst the most influential people on the planet, having been named amongst Times Magazine's 25 most influential people in 1996. Covey clocked up tens of awards in his lifetime, covering everything from services to humanity to multiple acknowledgements of his entrepreneurship. Of humble origin, Covey was an educator through and through. He first gained his bachelor's degree in business administration at BYU over in Utah, and then an MBA at Harvard Business School too. In his early career, he was a professor of the Marriott School of Management and again returned to this teaching in the latter stages of career. He resumed the role at Huntsman School of Business. Covey's known for being heavily influenced in his day by Peter Drucker and Carl Rogers, both highly acclaimed businessmen, speakers and educators in their own rights. Peter Drucker himself being attributed to having moulded the modern management practices that we still use today. Covey, like Drucker and Rogers, they were ahead of their time in many ways, and they paved the way for how we think about effective work practices, even today. Now, while many of you might know Covey through his 1989 best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Covey's work actually started a lot earlier, having published his work first 2 decades earlier in 1971. That first work, it would have many parallels with his best-selling work 2 decades later. You see, Covey was a devout Christian. He took comfort in learning from the Church of Latter-day Saints in Utah. It's said that the values that he was exposed to in LDS align very closely with the principles that 7 Habits center around, and that in his first book, The Spiritual Roots of Human Relations, you can see the early beginnings of Covey's thinking for 7 Habits. But enough about the man. Let's talk about the 7 Habits. In the same way that Covey was recognised by Times Magazine in 1996, the magazine recognised his book in 2011 also. All these years after its initial publication, it's still regarded as one of the 25 most influential management books of all time, and it's on record having sold 20 million copies worldwide. The book spent a whopping 250 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list, and the audio version of the book broke its own records. It was the first non-fiction selling book to achieve more than 1 million copies. At the time of his death, Covey's work spanned 40 years, where he'd written some 15 or so books. He's even published a book posthumously in 2022 via one of his 9 children. But the common theme that runs through much of Covey's work, however, is a single concept: habits. Through his work at the Leadership Center that he founded in 1987, and then following its successful merger with Franklin Quest 10 years later, his work at Franklin Covey shone a light through various seminars and leadership programs that he ran all over the world on effective habit formation. The 7 Habits is about enlightenment. It's a book that centers around self-reflection, where Covey himself describes the process of forming better habits. It's a journey that we need to travel. Something of great importance, but also marred with trial and error as we stumble and fall along the path to becoming a richer, better equipped person to face down the world. For Covey, this journey was symbolized through the formulation of internalized principles and patterns of behavior. In material that's still available and accessible today, he shares his opinion that an effective habit sits at the center of 3 core elements: knowledge, skill, and desire. Knowledge is the theoretical component. It's the what to do and why to do it, as Covey likes to refer to it. It's knowing what effective habits that you need to form and why they're of significance and importance. Skill, however, is the practical side. It's the how to do it. It's having the skill to put a more effective habit into practice, but also to be able to stick with it over time. Which leads us to the third one, desire, the motivational side. It's the want to do something. Having the sense of importance in something makes you want to follow through, makes you want to develop that more effective habit. 7 Habits is ultimately about a paradigm shift. It's about transitioning from one mindset through to another that's at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's about changing the way an individual perceives, understands, even interprets their surrounding world. And this for Covey centered around 7 core principles, which he liked to diagramize like this. Habit 1 is all about being proactive. It's accepting that today we live in a world where we're prone to reaction. A state of affairs that's leading people to remain in a constant state of burnout as we jump from one immediate urgent matter to the next, no longer in control of our work, but simply just reacting to or responding to whatever comes in or whatever shouts loudest. Habit 2 is about setting off on something with the end already in mind. It's about not starting something without first having a clear vision of what you want to achieve and you're able to visualize what success looks like. All too often, we live in a state of ambiguity as we work towards something that neither has a definitive end in mind nor a clear understanding of what success looks like. Habit 3 is all about prioritization. It's about putting first things first, as Covey likes to call it. It's the ability to determine what an actual priority is versus the false priorities that we often get drawn into, and be able to align your efforts to the actual priorities and put your effort where it's best served and most needed. Which leads us to habit 4. It's about compromise. In a world where we're often encouraged to compete, maybe even win at all costs, Covey encouraged us to look for the win-win in every situation, balancing courage with consideration, because win-lose or lose-win, they're both lose deals in the long run. Habit 5 centers around our ability to listen, to actively listen, as Covey likes to home us in on. In a world of noise and distraction, and where we can often listen just so that we can respond, Covey encourages people to rebalance their principles around seeking first to understand and then to be understood. This is quite possibly one of the hardest paradigm shifts that we all face today. Which leads us to habit 6. It's about seeking synergy with those around you. This means collaborating and looking for opportunity to provide, but also to seek help where necessary. Stay humble, and in doing so, be active in seeking out the ideas and help from others, as together everybody achieves more. And finally, habit 7. My personal favourite of all of these habits. It's about self-development. Sharpen the saw, as Covey puts it, is about prioritising self in amongst everything else that we do. It's about taking valuable time out to reflect so that we can grow and that we can discover continuous improvement. You'll notice that habits 1, 2 and 3 are primarily centred around us as individuals, whereas habits 4, 5 and 6, they're about the character that we show when we work alongside other people. This is intentional on Covey's part. It's the state of maturity that you develop as your mindset shifts from one end of the paradigm to the other. A maturity continuum for how humans develop in an upward moving spiral, from dependence to independence and finally interdependence. Now, each of these habits has a lot more beneath them, and Covey offers up various solutions and suggestions for how to form a more effective habit. But that's for another video, and it's not for this particular episode in this instance. But what do you do with this model? How can you put it to use in your leadership? Well, maybe start by reflecting on your current principles and how they may align or not align to the 7 habits that Covey lays out in his book. Questions like, number 1, to what extent am I reactive to the circumstances that are happening around me? Am I taking responsibility for my actions and my decisions, or am I just responding to what's going on around me day to day? Or number 2, do I have a clear goal that I'm working towards? Is it clear what my desired outcome is and what success would look like when I eventually get there? Number 3, to what extent am I able to prioritize important tasks and manage my time effectively? How effective actually am I in choosing what to work on and when? Number 4, do I seek to find a win that both parties find acceptable in my interactions with other people? Are my relationships mutually beneficial, or do I win more or lose more today? Number 5, to what extent do I actively listen to the people that I engage with today? Do I listen to reply, or do I listen with the intent of really understanding what's being said to me? Or number 6, do I work well with other people? Really work well with other people? Am I making use of their strengths? The strengths of the people that sit around me on my team? Are we working commonly towards a shared goal and utilizing all of those aspects together? And finally, number 7, am I devoting valuable time to my continuous investment? Am I successfully balancing the various aspects of my life, like my physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual well-being? This isn't an easy model to wrap your head around. There's a reason why Covey took 300 plus pages to summarize his thinking. And paradigm shifts are hard. To transition oneself from how we work and think today to a totally different system requires both dedication and sustained effort. But as Covey liked to summarize, habits are powerful factors in our lives. They constantly express our character. They determine our level of effectiveness in the same way that they determine our level of ineffectiveness. Like John Dryden, the English poet that Covey used to like to quote, we first make our habits, but then our habits make us. The 7 habits are common sense, but it's our job as leaders to make them common practice. You can check out more about Stephen Covey and the 7 habits. I've provided a link in the comments section below. I'd love you to learn more about him. And at the same time, please come back for episode 3 or feel free to check out past episodes of the Masterclass series. We love having you here with us.